All right, in order to be fully perceived, a stimulus must be sensed, attended, and interpreted. So we've looked at sensation in our prior segments, and we've looked at attention, and now we're going to look at interpretation. Interpretation requires cognitive effort, which can be influenced by arousal, distraction, and short-term memory. So we're going to walk through these one at a time, starting with arousal. Arousal is a state of physical alertness. Arousal has an interesting effect on cognitive ability and thus the ability to interpret information. Interesting because the effect is not linear, okay? Rather, it is bell curved. So when our arousal rates are low, we tend to be drowsy, tired, and bored. As students, I'm sure you are well aware that if you are too drowsy, it is hard to focus, pay attention, let alone interpret information in a meaningful way, right? On the other hand, when our arousal levels are too high, we are overstimulated, which depletes cognitive resources. It uses them up, leaving less resources for interpreting information. In fact, if arousal is low enough or high enough, we won't even notice. In other words, attend to that information. So at either extreme end, too little or too much, arousal can prevent attention before we even have a shot at interpretation. So moderate levels of arousal are the most conducive to successful interpretation. Distraction occurs when cognitive resources are divided. It affects interpretation in a linear fashion now, rather than a bell curve, and in a negative way. Regardless of what we tend to think, we are not really that skilled at multitasking. If we're having a conversation with someone else in the room, or texting, or otherwise distracted during a commercial, even if we do notice it, we are less likely to have enough cognitive resources left over to interpret it in any kind of a meaningful way. And the final thing to consider with interpretation is memory limits. Remember that short-term memory is limited to what magic number? It's a good review question. That number is 7. And whose rule was that? And that was Miller's rule, right? Short-term memory is also known as working memory. So our magic number indicates that people can generally work with a maximum of 7 pieces of information in their minds at a given time. Now, a unit of information can be a single number or a single letter, or 7 clumps. They can be talking about clumps here, right? So clumping letters together and talking about 7 words would be an example. If advertisers make their message too difficult to interpret by giving too many features and or facts about quality or effectiveness, consumers may not be able to effectively interpret it. Given how quickly people need to read billboards, 6 seconds on average, it is better to stick to 6 or fewer words when possible, rather than facts or features. So clearly, the designer of this picture billboard totally missed that memo. So imagine what a tricky line must exist between a message that is too simple, promoting what? Adaptation, right? And one that is too complex, which can interfere with attention and or interpretation. And we're going to finish with an interesting phenomena in interpretation, perceptual bias. We're going to illustrate this with a really cute study that we're going to refer to as the Seeing What We Want to See study. We do have a tendency to do that, don't we? Seeing what we want to see study. Now, you don't need to know the researchers' names, of course, or year, but Hastorf and Cantrell did this study. It's a very classic study. They did it in 1954. There have been many, many other studies that have also shown the seeing what we want to see effect. In other words, the perceptual bias. But this is the classic one. So 1954, Princeton and Dartmouth students viewed video footage of a particularly rough football game between these two rivals. And although they all saw the exact same footage, the degree to which students saw infractions and the blame they assigned for those they did see, as you can imagine, significantly depended on which college they attended. Okay, for your 3 tips derived from this lecture material. Number 1, remember all of Brian Wansink's work demonstrating how we generally underperceive how much food we consume? If you wish to eat healthier, one obvious tactic, of course, is to avoid buffets, right? But if buffets cannot be avoided, ask for a very small plate, one that is maybe meant for dessert, or better yet, one that is meant to be a tea saucer. Browse the entire display with the goal of choosing 3 items to try. Do not allow stacked food or any one type of food to touch another. That way, you will be limited to small servings of 3 items per trip. Also, we tend to eat slower and take smaller spoonfuls at a time when eating these limited quantities off smaller plates, which will allow you to actually enjoy your food more. Tip number 2, if you now or ever wish to eat healthier and or reduce your weight, download an app like the one that is called FitnessPal onto your phone. Set a goal and follow the directions. Logging your food and exercise only takes significant time the first week you begin, when your motivation is generally high enough, right? But after that, there are a lot of shortcuts that come into play that make it a lot faster. Remember that selective attention. We only tend to pay attention to a small amount of the food that we consume. Apps like these are designed to raise awareness. And tip number 3, remember how powerful distraction can be. If you wish to reduce your exposure to commercials and accomplish more to boot, buy your television viewing time. I think I mentioned the fact that I like to do that myself. Buy it by making a list of things in advance and using those commercial breaks to do things like run around the block or take out your trash, clean your bathroom, etc. This section has focused on sensation and perception. In particular, what factors affect whether information is sensed, attended, and interpreted. Throughout coming sections of the rest of this class, including our next section, Learning and Memory, we will look at ways in which marketers can manipulate how information is interpreted and explore other effects of perception and memory on consumer thought processes and behavior. So this concludes our sensation and perception lecture, and here is your fun guerrilla marketing example.